Gators Breakdown, episode 29. We are ready to go. Episode 29. Hard to believe. These numbers keep piling up. Keep doing this podcast, and thank you guys for joining me. The 29th episode now, so we're going to keep this thing going on into the off season. Recruiting, bowl game, going into spring practice. All that will be covered here in the next few weeks to months here on Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_STC, on Twitter at GatorDave_STC. And if you're checking this out now, that means you have found us live on YouTube. And the podcast will be put up right after this, the audio version, on SoundCloud and iTunes. So you can go to soundcloud.com/Gators Breakdown to find us there, or search in the iTunes store Gators Breakdown, and you can subscribe, like it there. Leave some reviews if you don't mind there, and if you like Gators Breakdown, and show some other people out there what Gators Breakdown is all about. So Gators, official visit weekend after some recruits visited Gainesville, the official visit weekend before the dead period. Florida got some good news in a commit and somewhat bad news, what was kind of expected in Jarrett Stidham committing to the Auburn Tigers. We'll hit on that. Of course, talking about the effect of both Kyree Campbell, that was a defensive tackle that committed to Florida, and Stidham choosing Auburn, and what that means for the Gators quarterbacks moving forward, and hit on just a touch of general recruiting talk. With the future of recruiting under Jim McElwain and company. So Kyree Campbell commits to Florida Saturday night. He tweeted it out. Jim McElwain sent out the hashtag chomp chomp signal out, and of course, Gator Twitter world was in a tizzy for about 10 minutes till we kind of figured out that Kyree Campbell committed to the Gators. He was a Woodbridge High School graduate. Announced on his own Twitter Saturday night that he committed to Florida. And Campbell was kind of a surprise. Nobody really knew he was visiting this weekend, kind of an under-the-radar type of visit here. He fits what the Gators need. We know the depth problems at defensive tackle after this year for the Gators, with Ivy and Caleb Brantley going. But Florida has some players recently decommit from the defensive tackle position, mainly Fred Hansford, and he committed to Penn State. So Florida, filling some holes at a position of need. And Kyree Campbell is the first guy to come in after those decommits and try and help fill that hole. Campbell played this past season at Wyoming Seminary in Pennsylvania. He went there after he was denied admission to North Carolina last year. Originally, Campbell is a 2016 recruit. He didn't want to go to junior college where he'd have to, go there for 2 years. He only wanted to go somewhere where he could get a prep school, where he could get his grades up in a hurry, and then go to another school, coming up in January. So he will be an early enrollee. He got his grades up. He'll be able to enroll at Florida as an early enrollee. Originally, Campbell had 40 offers, coming out of high school from all big-time programs, Bama, all the big-time schools, Florida, Florida State, Tennessee. Everybody recruited this kid, and he reopened his recruitment when he was going to prep school after he decommitted, or after he left North Carolina, after they told him he would be denied admission there. So once he reopened his recruitment, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Alabama, Oregon, South Carolina, and UCLA expressed their interest. Of those 6, only Oregon and UCLA did not offer him coming out of high school. Back in October, after his season ended in prep school, on his Twitter account, he announced that he'd be deciding between Temple, Oregon, Michigan, Pitt, Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, and Maryland, West Virginia. I'm not really officially sure the interest from those schools. This was a pinned tweet on his Twitter profile, so we don't know how committable the offers were from those schools. If he was maybe even thinking about walking on at some of the big time programs. Don't get me wrong. I think he's every bit as good as he was a 4-star coming out in some services in the 2016 cycle. So he's a big time prospect. Like I mentioned, all the big time schools are after him, and for a reason. I mean, as a senior, Campbell was first team All-State after finishing the season with 62 tackles 18 for loss, 8 sacks, 4 pass deflections, 2 interceptions, and 3 block kicks. So he's kind of the disruptive force there in the high school ranks. And to go through the different recruiting services here, he's considered the number 9 player in Virginia by Rivals.com, ranked the number 12 player in the state of Virginia, and the number 40 defensive tackle in the country by 24/7 Sports, listed as the number 10 player in the state of Virginia and 35th defensive tackle by ESPN. If you go and look at some film of Campbell, his outstanding quickness, his pretty good punch off the ball at the point of attack. I mean, 6'4", 320. Some even said he got up to 340. So maybe Florida's going to have to do some work with his weight if they find out he is overweight. He can be a useful kind of a run stuffer type of the Joey Ivy mold if you want to go for recent Gators, and not necessarily the John Bull or Caleb Brantley where he is just so fast off the ball and in the backfield with disruptive force. I mean, he's got some quickness to him, but he's not, I don't think right now he's John Bullard or Caleb Brantley. I think you're going to see CeCe Jefferson get moved inside a little bit more with the depth problems Florida's going to have at defensive tackle. You're going to see CeCe Jefferson take more of that explosive Bullard, Caleb Brantley role. And then while you have Kerry Clark and Taven Bryan, who fit that Ivy mold, that's kind of what Campbell was going to fit as well. So, with the tough, defensive or, tough run games that Florida's going to face year in and year out, a run stuffy defensive tackle is not necessarily a bad thing there. So, Campbell's was a surprise pickup, a good pickup for Florida. They really needed and need more, and I'll hit on that, need more defensive tackle. They've had a string of missing out on recent defensive tackle targets and still will be going hard after Alec Jackson from Alabama, Aubrey Solomon, and Tywone Truesdale from the state of Georgia. I will look for Florida to at least get one of those guys, more likely Truesdale from Georgia, but Solomon, if they can get him, that's a big time prospect that Florida could use, in recruiting and, recruiting in general, just to send some positive signs and to fill a need at defensive tackle. So I think it was a really good pickup for Florida. If you go by, what Campbell was coming out of high school originally in 2016, he had the big offers, and, it was going to North Carolina. He couldn't make it there before grade, so he had to go to prep school. A little summary here again. It's you have to hope with the year in prep school he didn't get out of shape, and from all accounts from his coach and stuff, he still has the passion there, and he really wanted to get his grades up. His academics were important, and that's what he wanted to do. And he still wanted to play at a big time program. He didn't want to go to junior college for 2 years, so he wanted to find a way to get himself back to a big time program. I mentioned it was a big surprise was nobody really knew he was in Gainesville visiting this past weekend. So it was a nice surprise when he was the name that popped up. I had to do a lot of research from him. So if you want to go back to my Twitter profile and Saturday, I was first on a lot of finding out his history and where he was at and what he was doing, and his offer list coming out of high school and all that good stuff. So it was a fun night, a little bit Saturday night during the Heisman ceremony, finding all this stuff on Kyree Campbell, the newest commit for the Florida 2017 cycle. Another player Florida was hoping to add to the 2017 cycle was definitely quarterback from Baylor, Jarrett Stidham. He chooses Auburn. It's kind of expected. There's not a lot of surprise there after reading the tea leaves from last week. How he would never really come out and say he was going to visit Florida this past weekend. He was a quarterback Florida could definitely use, of course, a kind of a come in on campus and start right away type of quarterback. But he chose Auburn. Not necessarily that's the best fit for him, but good luck to him. No hard feelings there. Just I think from what I've heard, just really didn't mesh with the Florida coaching staff. Probably part of that is getting in late with Stidham. I think, and I'll talk about what I kind of think the problem in general was here, and the general problem in McElwain's approach to recruiting, which I think will change. But I really think what kind of led to this and some of the quarterback problems Florida has is Jim McElwain believing too much in his coaching and his system to think that he can just plug, a Luke Del Rio, and Austin Appleby in, and him believing in his coaching so much that he can just plug those type of quarterbacks in and it will work. It's not working. It's not going to work. We saw what Luke Del Rio did. Come in, looked okay in the first few games. He got injured, was never the same. I think a lot of that could also be said. The competition got better, and Del Rio, we saw pretty much what he was worth. He's a backup quarterback in the SEC. He is a backup quarterback. Do you really think do you really think he turned away Will Grier the way he did? If he really thought Del Rio would play like he did, no, I think he finds a way to keep Will Grier around. That there's so much back and forth with the Grier situation, where they're kind of letting leave without really fighting it, or of course, some people said Grier lied about substance he took, and that kind of threw the trust away. I don't really know what happened there. I would hope to think they could have found some resolution where Grier stayed on campus, but I don't really know how much went on there behind that. But you just have to really think that if Grier was the quarterback we all thought he could be, I think McElwain probably believed too much in Luke Del Rio and just kind of let that situation pass. I really think that's McElwain's biggest decision making mistake there is of course, going back and believing too much in Luke Del Rio and relying too much on his coaching to get recruits when the recruits aren't seeing anything on the field from the quarterback position. Recruits want results. They aren't seeing them. And I think Mac knew that. I think that's why they tried so much and to get Stidham. I think he really believes in Franks and Trask, but you never really know until the lights come on. And when those guys are lining up against the SEC and FSU, what they're going to bring to the table. And, Stidham was another option. Depth, we've seen Florida had to go to a backup quarterback 2 seasons in a row. Last year with Treon Harris and this year with Austin Appleby, and the offense doesn't click. So it's, for whatever reason, I think, McElwain's biggest mistake, and I don't know, this is my guess, this is my opinion, it's just he believes too much in his coaching that would be able to get him out of any hole. But I think he's finding out right now that he needs a difference maker at quarterback. And that was part of the reason that he went after Stidham. So I don't think it's the sky is falling type of thing. 2 weeks ago, was when the whispers started coming out about Florida going after Stidham. And before that, most were fine with going with Trask or Franks going into next season. And, I still feel that way. I still think Florida's answer at quarterback is one of those two guys. And from what I've heard, lately and what we've seen and reading the tea leaves from what, McElwain has said in press conferences or whatever, that Felipe Franks maybe could be that guy. So I think what helps, and we know for now in the Outback Bowl, that Austin Appleby will be starter. Sounds like maybe Luke Del Rio will be the backup, in any way to save the red shirt from Felipe Franks or Kyle Trask. Now, here's what I think is going to happen leading up to this bowl prep against Iowa. You have 15 practices that all these young guys, and not just Felipe Franks and Kyle Trask, all the young guys who didn't get a lot of playing time this year. You have 15 practices for bowl prep and for next year prep. This is in a way another round of spring practice. So what probably is going to happen, and I know a lot of coaches who do this. The first 45 minutes of these 15 practices is you getting prepared for Iowa. But the second half of these practices, and this is the same practice session I'm talking about. The first half of, say, the first 45 minutes of practice is bowl prep versus Iowa. The second half of practice should be you getting your young guys in and letting them go through the reps. So I think for as much as possible, what you would see in bowl practice is Felipe Franks and Kyle Trask getting a lot of reps. So these are 15 practices these guys are going to get, where they should be getting a majority of the reps in the second half of practices and kind of preparing. I know some coaches do this. They prepare for their next season opener in this bowl game prep. It's hard to believe, and they're thinking about a game a year from now, but especially one for Florida now where they're heading with Michigan. I mean, some coaches, they're out there, do prepare for their season opener the next year. I've heard coaches talk about it. And, it's a way to jumpstart. And with the young guys Florida's going to be playing on offense, especially some of the young receivers still, and namely, of course, Felipe Franks and Kyle Trask. Those guys are going to get as many reps as they can. So this is kind of a mini spring practice that these guys will get. And, of course, going in to the real spring practice next year. And I really think, instead of out of the picture, you have your two guys. You have Felipe Franks, you have Kyle Trask. One of these guys, hopefully, need to just jump ahead, be the guy after spring practice. Hopefully be the guy going into the spring game and show out. But we've already seen, stats in spring games don't mean anything. We looked over here, 10 of 11 last year, looked great, I think 2 touchdowns or whatever, and we see it doesn't translate at all to what you see in the fall. Can we glean a little bit? Maybe. You'd rather see him look good, of course, but what's going to make this decision for the coaches are the practices leading up to the spring game. So what you would like to hear, what you would like to see with Stidham out of the picture, Felipe Franks, Kyle Trask battling out, is one guy to take the bull by the horns. And after spring practice, the best thing that could happen is Jim McElwain to name one of those guys starters, one of those guys the starter going into fall practice. Be the guy going into fall camp next year, getting all of the reps heading into that big game against Michigan. But it starts with these bowl practices coming up, 15 practices. These guys can show something there and leading up to the game versus Iowa. So, if we could see practice, we could be at practice, we probably would see a lot more of these guys. But that's what we'll just have to wait and see, it looks like. McElwain said he wasn't going to burn the red shirt, in this game. Felipe Franks, Kyle Trask has no plan of playing. And if we look at would be Austin Appleby and Luke Del Rio, quarterback 1 and 2 there. So that's been Gators Breakdown, episode 29. Talking about Kyree Campbell committing to the Gators and the effect of Jarrett Stidham choosing Auburn and what that means for the Florida quarterbacks going through bowl preparation and upcoming spring practice. So I mentioned you can find Gators Breakdown on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, YouTube as well. You can like us on YouTube, subscribe there. You can find me, David Waters, at GatorDave_SEC on Twitter, at GatorDave_SEC on Twitter. So these Gators Breakdown episodes, we'll spread them out a little bit if there's news. We'll definitely do a show. I'm going to keep doing these recruiting profiles. Had a nice one last week with Zachary Carter and Malik Davis, and today definitely with Kyree Campbell, the newest commit for the Florida 2017 cycle. So this has been Gators Breakdown. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.